The strange distress signal. Dr. Lucas Reed sat in his dimly lit study, surrounded by glowing monitors and a cluttered desk covered with notes, coffee mugs, and bits of circuit boards. The room buzzed with the hum of machinery, but his mind was focused on the mysterious signal that had interrupted his routine just hours ago. It all started when Lucas's satellite array picked up an unusual transmission from deep space. At first, he thought it was interference or some random cosmic noise, but the pattern was too deliberate, too precise to be random. He ran the data through his decoding software, and what he found made his heart skip a beat. The signal wasn't just noise. It was a message. As he leaned closer to the screen, lines of alien text scrolled across, accompanied by faint audio that sounded like a mix of whispers and static. Lucas, a brilliant scientist but no linguist, quickly ran the transmission through a translation program. The text appeared on his monitor in shaky English. "Human, we need your help. Our queen is dying. You are our last hope. Respond immediately." Lucas froze. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? But the signal's origin was no joke. It came from a sector of space too far for any known human craft to reach. The coordinates pointed to a star system he had only read about in astrophysics journals. "Impossible," he muttered to himself, rubbing his temples. But the message didn't care if he believed it or not. It repeated every 10 minutes, as if it was waiting for his reply. Hours passed as Lucas dived deeper into the mystery. He cross-checked the star system with existing databases and found no record of intelligent life there. Yet the technology behind the signal was far beyond anything Earth had developed. The sheer complexity of the transmission hinted at a highly advanced civilization, one that was desperate enough to contact a human. Just as he was about to dismiss it as a hoax, the message changed. This time, it came with a countdown timer. 23:59. 12 remaining. Failure to respond will result in consequences for your planet. Lucas's stomach tightened. Consequences. What did that mean? He stared at the timer as it ticked down, every second adding to his unease. The message wasn't asking anymore, it was demanding. He decided to record a response. "This is Dr. Lucas Reed, Earth scientist. Who are you, and why do you need my help?" His voice trembled slightly as he spoke into the microphone. He sent the response back through the same frequency, unsure if anyone, or anything, would hear it. To his surprise, the reply came almost instantly. This time, the audio was clearer, and the voice was unmistakably alien. It was deep, resonant, and filled with urgency. "Dr. Reed, you must act quickly. Our queen is the lifeblood of our people. Without her, our civilization will fall, and so will the balance of peace in the galaxy. Only a human can save her. You have 23 hours to decide." Lucas leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Why would aliens need a human? What made him, of all people, so special? He wasn't a hero or a soldier, just a scientist who spent most of his days tinkering with machines and gazing at the stars. He barely had time to process the situation when his phone buzzed. It was his old friend and fellow scientist, Dr. Sarah Patel, who worked at NASA. "Lucas, are you seeing this?" she asked, her voice a mix of excitement and fear. "We intercepted the same signal. It's real." Lucas felt a strange mix of relief and dread. If NASA confirmed the signal, it wasn't a prank. But that also meant the threat was real. "What do you think they want?" he asked. "They're desperate," Sarah said, "and if they're advanced enough to contact us, they're advanced enough to follow through on their threats. We have to take this seriously." Lucas hung up and stared at the countdown again. 22 hours remained. His instincts told him to ignore it, to let someone else handle the problem. But a nagging thought crept into his mind. What if he was the only one who could help? What if ignoring the message meant dooming not just the aliens, but humanity as well? As night fell, Lucas's small home lab was filled with the faint glow of monitors and the relentless ticking of the countdown. He paced back and forth, replaying the message in his head. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the words, Only a human can save her. He thought of all the movies and stories he had grown up with. Humans saving aliens, aliens saving humans. It always seemed so far-fetched, so fictional. But now it was his reality. He didn't feel ready, but he knew time wasn't on his side. Then, just as he resolved to sleep on the decision, the monitors in his lab flickered. The message appeared again, but this time, it wasn't text. It was a hologram. The image of an alien figure emerged, glowing faintly in the dim room. The creature was tall and elegant, with shimmering skin that looked like it was made of liquid metal. Its eyes glowed with an intensity that made Lucas's heart pound. The alien spoke directly to him, its voice calm yet commanding. "Dr. Reed, you must trust us. If you do not come, your planet will suffer. The Queen's fate is tied to all life, including yours." Lucas stood frozen, staring at the hologram as the countdown ticked down to 21 hours. His decision would change everything: his life, his world, and possibly the universe. Would he answer the call? Or would he let the countdown reach 0? The alien messenger. The cold silence of the night was broken by a soft hum, growing louder with each passing second. Dr. Lucas Reed stood by his window, his eyes scanning the starry sky, half expecting the strange signal to be some elaborate joke or a cosmic anomaly that would disappear by morning. But when his house lights flickered and the hum turned into a deep, resonant vibration, Lucas realized this was no joke. He stepped outside, clutching a flashlight, his heart pounding. The source of the sound was clear now, a glowing orb descending from the sky like a falling star. It landed in his backyard with a soft thud, its light pulsing gently as though it were alive. Lucas froze. His flashlight trembled in his hand as the orb opened with a hiss, releasing a faint mist. A tall, humanoid figure stepped out, their movements fluid yet deliberate. The figure's metallic, shimmering skin reflected the pale moonlight, and their glowing eyes locked onto Lucas, sending a chill down his spine. "Dr. Lucas Reed," the figure spoke, their voice layered with an otherworldly echo. "I am Krita, envoy of Queen Lyra. We don't have much time." Lucas's mind raced. He wanted to speak, to question, to run. But his legs felt rooted to the ground. "You're real," he finally managed to whisper. Krita tilted her head, a gesture that felt both human and alien. "I am as real as your fears, Dr. Reed. The signal you received was sent by me. Our queen is dying, and your presence is required immediately. You are her only hope." Lucas felt a mix of awe and dread. He had spent his life dreaming about the possibility of alien life, but now, standing face to face with one, the reality was overwhelming. "Why me? I'm just a scientist. I don't even leave my lab, let alone save alien queens." Krita stepped closer, her movements smooth and deliberate. "Your people underestimate your importance in the grand design of the universe. Your intellect, your species' resilience, and most importantly, your biology, are key to saving our queen. Without her, not only will my people perish, but your world will face the consequences." Lucas shook his head, trying to process her words. "Wait, what kind of consequences? Are you threatening us?" Krita's glowing eyes softened. "Not a threat, a reality. Queen Lyra is the anchor of peace across several star systems. Without her, chaos will ripple through the galaxy, and Earth, as a developing planet, will not be spared. The enemies who wish to see her fall will turn their gaze upon your world." Lucas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The idea of alien warlords targeting Earth was terrifying. "Even if I agree to help, how can I save your queen? I don't have the technology, the knowledge, anything." Krita raised a hand, and a holographic projection appeared between them. It showed Queen Lyra, an ethereal figure suspended in a glowing cocoon, her body flickering with dim light. "The queen suffers from a rare condition caused by exposure to a rogue star's radiation. Our advanced medicine has failed because her ailment requires something we cannot produce, a human's genetic code. Your species, specifically your blood, has the necessary resistance to create a cure. Lucas stared at the projection, his mind spinning. My blood? How can you be so sure? Krita gestured, and another projection appeared, this time showing detailed genetic sequences. Our studies have shown that human DNA contains unique properties, particularly yours. The signal was sent to multiple Earth scientists, but only your genetic markers aligned with the requirements. Lucas felt his knees go weak. So, you're saying I've been chosen because of my DNA? That's insane. Krita stepped closer, her expression unreadable. Insane or not, it is the truth. And time is running out. The Queen's condition worsens by the hour, and enemies have already begun to destabilize the peace she has upheld. Lucas looked back at his house, the warm glow of his study offering a fleeting sense of normalcy. But how could he return to his routine after this? If I go with you, how long will it take? What happens to me? Krita's tone softened. The journey will be short by our means, but the task will not be without risk. However, I promise that your safety will be my priority. You have my word as the Queen's envoy. He hesitated, the weight of the decision crushing. And if I say no? Krita's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. Then Earth will remain a target, and your species, unprepared for what is to come, will face extinction. Lucas clenched his fists, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear and doubt. He was a scientist, not a hero. But the look in Krita's eyes, the mix of urgency and trust, made him wonder if he could really turn his back on this. Fine, he said, his voice shaky but resolute. I'll go. But I need to know everything. No secrets. Krita nodded, a faint smile touching her alien features. You are braver than you realize, Dr. Reed. Come, we must leave now. The glowing orb retracted into a sleek, silver spacecraft that hummed with quiet energy. Lucas took one last look at his home before stepping inside. The doors sealed behind him, and he felt a strange sense of finality. As the ship rose into the night sky, Lucas gazed out at the shrinking Earth below, his mind filled with questions. What awaited him on the alien world? Could he really save their queen, and humanity along with her? The answers lay among the stars. Journey to the alien world. Dr. Lucas Reed clutched the armrest of his seat as the alien spacecraft shot through the sky, climbing higher and faster than anything he had ever experienced. The small cabin hummed with a strange energy, its walls glowing faintly with patterns that seemed alive. Every surface pulsed rhythmically, as if the ship itself was breathing. Krita, seated across from him, was calm and composed, her metallic skin shimmering in the dim light. Lucas tried to focus on his surroundings, but his mind kept drifting back to his decision. He had agreed to leave Earth, leave everything he knew, to save a queen he had never met and a species he didn't understand. Was he a fool, or had he just stepped into a chapter of history no one on Earth could comprehend? This ship, Lucas said, breaking the silence, it feels alive. Krita tilted her head slightly, a gesture Lucas was starting to recognize as curiosity. You are perceptive, Dr. Reed. This craft is biosynthetic, designed to adapt to its passengers and respond to their needs. It is not just a vessel. It is a partner. Lucas raised an eyebrow. A partner? You're telling me this thing thinks? It does more than think, Krita replied, her glowing eyes fixed on him. It feels. It protects, and it will carry us safely through the void. The ship trembled as it reached the upper atmosphere, and Lucas's stomach churned. He had been on airplanes before, but this was different. There were no engines roaring, no vibrations of machinery, just an eerie silence punctuated by the occasional hum. The ship seemed to glide effortlessly, as if gravity itself had no hold on it. Suddenly, the cabin darkened, and the walls shifted, revealing a panoramic view of space. Lucas gasped as the endless black canvas, filled with stars, stretched before him. He could see Earth below, a brilliant blue marble, growing smaller with every passing second. "It's beautiful," Lucas murmured, unable to tear his eyes away. Krita nodded. "Your planet holds a unique beauty, one that many civilizations envy. Perhaps that is why it remains a target." Lucas frowned, her words pulling him back to reality. "You keep talking about Earth being a target. What aren't you telling me?" Krita hesitated, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. "The enemies of Queen Lyra are not merely seeking to destroy her. They seek control over everything she protects. If she falls, your planet will be among the first to suffer. Her protection has shielded Earth from interstellar conflicts for centuries." Lucas's stomach tightened. "Centuries? You're saying Earth has been under your queen's protection this whole time?" "Yes," Krita said softly. "Your species is not ready for the vastness of the galaxy. Many would exploit your world's resources, your people's potential. The Queen's influence keeps such forces at bay. But now, her illness has weakened her reach, and those who would see her fall are growing bolder." Before Lucas could respond, the ship shuddered violently, and alarms echoed through the cabin. The once calm walls now displayed chaotic patterns, flashing red and yellow. Krita sprang to her feet, her movements swift and precise. "What's happening?" Lucas shouted, gripping the armrest as the ship jolted again. "We're under attack," Krita said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Enemy drones have intercepted us. They must have detected your departure." Lucas's heart raced. "Drones? You mean like alien fighter jets?" Krita tapped a panel on the wall, and a holographic display appeared, showing several sleek, black ships pursuing them. Their forms were angular, predatory, and they moved with terrifying speed. "They are unmanned, but deadly. Their only purpose is destruction." The ship banked sharply, throwing Lucas against his seatbelt. He watched as beams of light shot past the window, narrowly missing the craft. The ship responded with its own defenses, firing bursts of plasma that illuminated the dark void. Lucas clenched his fists, feeling helpless. "What can I do? How do we stop them?" "You can do nothing," Krita said firmly. "Focus on staying alive. I will handle this." She moved to the center of the cabin and placed her hands on a glowing sphere that rose from the floor. The ship seemed to respond to her touch, maneuvering with impossible agility. Lucas could feel the tension in the air as the drones closed in, their weapons charging. The battle was unlike anything Lucas had ever imagined. The ship wove through the void with precision, dodging beams of energy that could have disintegrated it in an instant. Krita remained focused, her connection to the ship unshaken even as the drones surrounded them. Suddenly, the cabin lights dimmed, and Lucas felt the ship accelerate beyond anything he thought possible. The stars outside blurred, turning into streaks of light as the ship entered what Krita called a hyperwave. "What just happened?" Lucas asked, his voice shaky. "We escaped," Krita said, releasing the glowing sphere. She turned to face him, her expression grim. "But they will follow. They will not stop until the Queen is dead. And Earth is vulnerable." The ship slowed, emerging from the hyperwave into a system unlike anything Lucas had seen. A massive planet dominated the view, its surface covered in shimmering oceans and glowing cities. Orbital platforms floated around it, their lights blinking like stars. "Welcome to Valorous," Krita said, her voice tinged with pride and urgency. "The heart of the Queen's empire and the battleground for her survival." Lucas stared at the planet, his awe tempered by the weight of what lay ahead. The fight had only just begun, and he was already in over his head. The dying Queen. The royal palace of Valorous was unlike anything Dr. Lucas Reed had imagined. Towering spires of crystalline structures reached high into the alien sky, their surfaces glowing softly with an otherworldly light. The air shimmered with faint energy currents, and the ground beneath Lucas's feet felt alive, almost pulsing with warmth. Krita led him through the grand halls, her movements quick and purposeful, while Lucas struggled to keep up, overwhelmed by the sheer beauty and alien nature of his surroundings. "This place," Lucas murmured, glancing around, "it feels alive." Krita didn't break her stride. "It is. The palace is an extension of the Queen's essence. Her health sustains it. Her illness weakens it." Lucas's eyes widened. "You mean this entire structure is connected to her?" Krita nodded, her tone somber. "The Queen's vitality is tied to her people, her planet, her empire. That is why your presence here is so urgent." As they entered the inner sanctum, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, almost oppressive, and the soft glow of the palace dimmed, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. Lucas could feel an unexplainable pressure in his chest, as if the very essence of the place mourned its queen's condition. At the heart of the sanctum lay Queen Lyra. Lucas stopped in his tracks, unable to tear his eyes away from the sight before him. The queen was suspended in a massive crystalline cocoon, her body partially visible through the translucent material. Her form was luminous, her skin a shimmering silver that flickered weakly, like a candle about to go out. Long, flowing tendrils of light extended from her cocoon, connecting to the walls and floor, pulsing faintly as if struggling to maintain a fragile link. "She looks," Lucas began, struggling to find the words, "so human." Krita turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Her form is a reflection of what your mind can comprehend. To us, she appears differently, but no matter how she is seen, she is the lifeblood of our people." Around the cocoon, alien physicians worked tirelessly, their hands moving with precision as they monitored the queen's condition. Strange devices hovered around her, emitting beams of light and soft hums, but the expressions on the physicians' faces were grim. One of them approached Krita, speaking in a language Lucas couldn't understand. Krita responded quickly, her tone tense, before turning back to Lucas. "They say her condition is worsening," she explained. "The radiation poisoning has spread too far. None of our treatments are working. That is why you are here." Lucas stepped closer to the cocoon, his scientific curiosity battling with his unease. The queen's flickering form exuded an undeniable presence, a sense of power and fragility intertwined. As he examined her, he felt a sudden warmth spread through his chest, followed by a voice, not spoken, but resonating directly in his mind. "Dr. Lucas Reed," the voice said, soft yet commanding. "You have come. Thank you." Lucas stumbled back, clutching his head. "Did she just talk to me?" Krita nodded. "The queen communicates telepathically. Her energy connects to those in her presence. She speaks directly to your essence." Lucas took a shaky breath, his mind reeling. "She doesn't sound like someone who's dying." "The queen's will is strong," Krita said, "but her body is failing. She cannot hold on much longer." The queen's voice returned, filling Lucas's thoughts. "I can feel your doubt, human. You question why you were chosen. But you are here because you are capable. Do not fear the unknown. It is where your strength lies." Lucas swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. "What exactly am I supposed to do? I'm not a doctor, let alone an alien doctor." Krita gestured to one of the physicians, who brought forth a holographic display showing complex molecular structures. The queen's illness was caused by exposure to a rogue star's radiation, something our biology cannot combat. But your genetic makeup, specifically your blood, contains proteins that can neutralize the effects of this radiation. We need to synthesize a cure using your DNA. Lucas stared at the hologram, his mind racing. And what if this doesn't work? What if my DNA isn't enough? Krita's expression hardened. "We have no other options. You are our last hope." The weight of her words pressed down on Lucas. He had always considered himself a man of science, someone who dealt in facts and probabilities. But this was beyond anything he had ever prepared for. The fate of an entire species, and possibly his own planet, rested on his shoulders. As he pondered his next move, a sudden alarm blared through the sanctum. The walls trembled, and the physicians exchanged panicked glances. Krita's glowing eyes narrowed as she activated a holographic map of the palace. "What's happening?" Lucas asked, his voice tinged with alarm. "Sabotage," Krita said grimly. "The Queen's enemies have infiltrated the palace." Before Lucas could react, a deafening explosion rocked the sanctum, and the crystalline cocoon shuddered violently. The tendrils of light connecting the Queen to the palace flickered and dimmed, and Lucas felt a surge of panic. "They're trying to kill her," Krita said, drawing a sleek, glowing weapon from her side. "Dr. Reed, stay close to me. If they succeed, this mission ends here, and so does your planet." Lucas's heart pounded as chaos erupted around him. The Queen's survival was no longer just a question of science. It was a race against time, and Lucas was caught in the middle of a conflict far greater than himself. The sabotage. The explosion reverberated through the crystalline halls of the palace, shaking the walls like a furious roar of thunder. Lucas staggered as shards of glowing crystal rained down from above, their faint hum fading into eerie silence. Krita grabbed his arm, steadying him before shoving a sleek alien weapon into his hands. "Take this," she said, her voice sharp and urgent. "We're under attack." Lucas stared at the weapon, a glowing rod pulsing with energy. "I don't even know how to use this." "You aim," Krita snapped, "and hope you don't miss. Follow me. They're coming for the Queen." As the sanctum plunged into chaos, alien guards rushed into position, their armor gleaming under the dimming palace lights. Krita led Lucas down a side corridor, her movements quick and deliberate. Behind them, the Queen's cocoon emitted faint pulses of light, its energy flickering like a dying star. The physicians worked frantically to stabilize her, but the situation was spiraling out of control. "Krita," one of the guards shouted, pointing toward a breach in the palace wall. Through the shattered crystal, a group of enemy infiltrators emerged, their forms cloaked in shadow. Their angular armor and glowing red visors made them look more like machines than living beings. "They're shadow raiders," Krita muttered, her glowing eyes narrowing. "Assassins sent by the usurper." Lucas's pulse quickened. "The usurper? You mean someone's trying to take the Queen's place?" Krita didn't answer. She raised her weapon, firing a beam of bright light that struck one of the raiders, sending them collapsing in a heap of sparks. "Stay close, Dr. Reed," she ordered. "They can't get to the Queen." The infiltrators moved with inhuman precision, their weapons emitting piercing, crackling energy bolts. Lucas ducked behind a crystalline pillar as a bolt barely missed his head, leaving a scorch mark on the wall. His hand shook as he clutched the weapon Krita had given him. "What do they want?" Lucas yelled over the sounds of battle. "To ensure the Queen dies," Krita replied, crouching behind a nearby column. "Her death will fracture the galaxy, leaving Earth vulnerable to their invasion." "This is bigger than you know, Dr. Reed." The weight of her words hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about alien politics, it was about the survival of his planet. He peered around the pillar and saw one of the raiders advancing toward the sanctum, their weapon trained on the Queen's cocoon. "No," Lucas shouted, surprising himself as he raised the alien weapon and fired. A burst of light struck the raider, sending them tumbling to the ground. His chest heaved, the adrenaline coursing through his veins, making his head spin. Krita smirked. Not bad for a scientist. As the battle raged on, more raiders poured into the palace, their numbers overwhelming the guards. Krita activated a small holographic device on her wrist, summoning a map of the palace. "We need to move the Queen. The sanctum isn't safe anymore." Lucas's eyes widened. "Move her? How?" "She's in a giant crystal." Krita tapped the map, and an image of an underground chamber appeared. "The palace's core chamber can shield her from the raiders. It's the most secure place on Valoris. But we'll need to transfer her there manually." "Manually?" Lucas repeated, his voice rising in disbelief. "She's attached to half the palace." "We have no choice," Krita said. "If we stay here, she dies." With a plan in motion, The guards formed a protective perimeter around the queen's cocoon. Strange machines emerged from the floor, their arms extending to disconnect the glowing tendrils linking the queen to the sanctum. As each tendril was severed, the palace dimmed further, its once bright walls now a dull gray. Lucas watched nervously as the cocoon was carefully lifted by an anti-gravity platform, its surface flickering weakly. The queen's voice echoed in his mind again, faint and strained. "Dr. Reed, you must protect me." "I'm trying," Lucas muttered under his breath, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing him. The group moved quickly through the palace, the queen's cocoon floating silently behind them. Lucas stayed close to Krita, his weapon ready, though his hands still shook. The air grew colder as they descended into the lower levels, the walls here dark and foreboding. "We're almost there," Krita said, her voice tight. "The core chamber is just ahead." But before they could reach their destination, a massive explosion rocked the corridor, throwing Lucas and the others to the ground. When the dust cleared, Lucas looked up to see a towering figure emerging from the smoke, a raider larger and more heavily armed than the others. "This one's different," Lucas said, his voice trembling. Krita cursed under her breath. "It's an enforcer. They're designed to break through our strongest defenses." The enforcer raised its weapon, a massive cannon glowing with unstable energy. Lucas could feel the heat radiating from it even at a distance. "What do we do?" Lucas asked, his voice desperate. Krita didn't hesitate. "We fight." The battle with the enforcer was unlike anything Lucas had faced. The corridor became a war zone, beams of energy cutting through the air as Krita and the guards tried to take it down. Lucas fired wildly, his shots bouncing off the enforcer's thick armor. "Dr. Reed," Krita shouted, tossing him a small device. "Attach this to its core. It'll disable it." Lucas stared at the device, his mind racing. The enforcer's core was glowing faintly on its chest, but reaching it meant getting dangerously close. "I can't do this," he shouted. "You can," Krita said firmly. "You must." With no time to think, Lucas dashed toward the enforcer, dodging energy blasts as he went. His heart pounded in his chest, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. But the thought of Earth of the Queen pushed him forward. He leaped onto the enforcer, grabbing onto its armor as it thrashed violently. With trembling hands, he attached the device to its core and pressed the activation button. A surge of energy rippled through the enforcer, and it let out a mechanical roar before collapsing in a heap of sparking metal. Lucas rolled to the ground, gasping for breath. Krita rushed to his side, pulling him to his feet. "You did it," she said, a rare smile breaking through her stern demeanor. Lucas looked back at the fallen enforcer, his body shaking. "I can't believe I'm still alive." With the enforcer defeated, the group finally reached the core chamber. The queen's cocoon was placed in a central cradle, surrounded by glowing energy fields. Lucas felt a moment of relief, but he knew the fight was far from over. "The queen is safe for now," Krita said, "but the raiders won't stop until she's dead, and the bomb they planted in the palace could destroy everything." Lucas's heart sank. "A bomb?" Krita nodded grimly. "And we have less than an hour to find it." The stakes had never been higher, and Lucas knew there was no turning back. The human solution. The low hum of the core chamber was the only sound that filled the air as Dr. Lucas Reed stared at the queen's cocoon, still suspended in a delicate cradle of energy. It glowed faintly, but the light seemed to pulse less with every passing minute, as if her life force was gradually slipping away. The weight of the situation crushed down on him, his hands still shaking from the fight, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Krita paced nearby, her eyes flicking between the queen and the holographic map projected in front of her. She was calm, focused, but Lucas could see the concern in her posture. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice low. "The raiders will regroup. And if the queen dies, so does any chance for peace." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on him. But I don't understand. You've tried everything, right? All your technology, your medicine. Nothing worked. What makes you think my blood will fix it? Krita didn't look at him as she answered. It's not just your blood, Dr. Reed. It's your species' resilience. Your bodies have an inherent resistance to certain forms of radiation, especially the type the Queen's body has been exposed to. But even that alone is not enough. Lucas's heart raced. Then what else do you need from me? She finally met his gaze. We need you to combine your knowledge with our science. We need you to help us understand your blood, your biology, in ways we never have before. You need to create the cure. Lucas stared at her, stunned. You want me to do what? I'm not a doctor, Krita. I'm a scientist. A geneticist, yes, but not someone who can make a cure on the spot. You are our only option, she said, her voice steady but urgent. You are the bridge between our technology and your biology. Only you can synthesize what is needed. Lucas turned away from Krita, running his hands through his hair, overwhelmed by the weight of his responsibility. His mind spun with calculations, theories, and genetic models. He had always worked with cells and DNA, but never with anything like this. Never with a life hanging in the balance of every decision he made. He closed his eyes, trying to think clearly, but the pressure felt unbearable. Think, Lucas, he muttered to himself. You've got to think. What would make it work? Krita didn't interrupt him as he paced back and forth. Instead, she moved to a console, activating several alien devices that hummed to life with a soft, rhythmic pulse. It was a strange mixture of high-tech and organic, as though the technology was intertwined with living matter. The console displayed a series of complex data points, and Lucas immediately saw that the calculations were beyond anything he had seen before. Alien genetics, interwoven with human physiology. This is impossible, he whispered, staring at the screen. The molecular patterns danced in front of his eyes like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. We have all the data you need, Krita said softly. But the final step is yours. It took hours for Lucas to gather his thoughts and approach the problem with the methodical focus of a scientist. He dug into his knowledge of genetics, molecular biology, and human resilience. His hands moved with surprising confidence now, working with the alien equipment Krita had set up. There was no room for error. Every time the Queen's cocoon flickered, Lucas's heart skipped a beat. Krita had gone silent, watching him work, her eyes never leaving him. Lucas didn't need to look up to know that the pressure was mounting, both from the ticking clock and from the weight of the Queen's life that was in his hands. He needed something that could bridge the gap between their species' biology, human resistance to radiation, alien biology. What could make them compatible? His mind began to click as he worked. The key wasn't just in his blood. It was in the way his blood cells could adapt. They had a unique ability to recover and repair DNA, to mitigate damage from radiation in a way that no other species could. That's it, Lucas breathed to himself, his eyes wide. The key isn't just resistance, it's adaptability. The next few hours were a blur of activity. He worked without stopping, pulling from every bit of genetic knowledge he had and integrating it into the alien technology. The alien systems were far beyond what humanity had, but they weren't entirely different. At their core, both species were driven by the same principles of biology: growth, repair, and survival. Lucas ran tests on his own blood, watching as it responded to the alien machinery. The cells, when exposed to a controlled amount of radiation, began to repair themselves at an unprecedented rate. There was something about human resilience that was allowing it to heal at a speed Krita's people couldn't replicate. Almost there, Lucas muttered, his voice hoarse from hours of concentration. He adjusted the settings on the bioscanner, making sure the molecular synthesis was perfect. The last step was the most delicate. If he got it wrong, the serum could either fail or harm the Queen. At last, Lucas took a deep breath and carefully extracted the synthesized serum from the machine. It was glowing faintly, almost alive in its own right. He felt a mix of awe and dread as he stared at it. This small vial held the life of the Queen and the fate of Earth. He turned to Krita, who had remained silent through the process, her posture rigid. "This is it," Lucas said, his voice strained with exhaustion. "If it works, the Queen's body should accept it, and she'll begin to heal. But if it doesn't..." Krita's glowing eyes softened for a moment. "You've done what no one else could. If it works, the galaxy will owe you its future." With the serum in hand, they rushed back to the Queen's chamber. The energy was even dimmer now, the palace eerily quiet as they passed through its halls. The guards were still holding the line, but Lucas knew the real battle was far from over. The Queen's cocoon flickered weakly, almost as though it were alive and in pain. Lucas's breath caught in his throat as he approached, but Krita stood firm beside him. "Now, Dr. Reed," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "Now is your moment." With trembling hands, Lucas injected the serum into the Queen's cocoon. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Then suddenly, the cocoon began to glow. The Queen's voice filled Lucas's mind again, but this time it was stronger, more vibrant. "You have saved me, human," she said, her tone full of gratitude. "You have saved us all." The light from the cocoon intensified, spreading through the palace, restoring the vibrancy that had been lost. For the first time in hours, Lucas felt a sense of hope surge through him. He had done it. The Queen was healing. But in the back of his mind, one thought remained. The war was far from over. The raiders would be back, and the real battle was just beginning. A hero's legacy. The brilliant light from Queen Lyra's cocoon illuminated the chamber, casting long shadows that flickered with the soft rhythm of life returning to the heart of the palace. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Lucas Reed stood at the foot of the Queen's throne, his body trembling with exhaustion and relief, but his heart still thumping with the awareness that their work was far from over. The serum he had created, an untested mixture of human resilience and alien technology, had worked, but the battle for peace had only just begun. The Queen's glowing form shimmered as she slowly emerged from the cocoon, her ethereal body unwrapping from the glowing tendrils of light. Her eyes, deep pools of energy, focused on Lucas, and she began to speak, directly into his mind. As before, human, her voice reverberated in his mind, strong and full of power. "You have done what none of my people thought possible. Your species has saved us, and in doing so, you have saved the galaxy." Lucas swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. The Queen's presence was overwhelming. She radiated power and wisdom that Lucas could not hope to comprehend. He had only come here to help one species, to help the Queen, but now he understood something deeper. The Queen's words weren't just about her. They were about Earth, about all of humanity. "Your people are bound to the future of the stars." Lucas Reed, Queen Lyra continued, her form floating gracefully above the floor, her energy settling like a calm, warm breeze. "The power that runs through you now connects us in ways beyond your understanding. You are not just a scientist anymore. You are part of something much greater." Lucas shook his head. "I'm just a man." "I don't. You are the man who defied the odds, the man who bridged two worlds. You were chosen because your species holds the strength to heal, the power to adapt. Not many understand this, but your kind is special." She paused, her voice growing even more intense. "You will face trials ahead, Lucas Reed. The enemies we fought, the ones who wish to see my people crumble, will not rest. They will come again. And your Earth, our new ally, will be in their sights." He felt a weight press down on him, like the very stars themselves were watching, waiting. The Queen's words weren't just a warning. They were a call to arms, a call he didn't know how to answer. "But I'm not a soldier," he protested, his voice raw with fear. "I've only ever studied genetics. I can't fight a war. You've already fought, human, the Queen replied. You fought with your mind, with your knowledge. And that is the greatest weapon you possess. I am not asking you to be a soldier, but to be a leader. You will need to guide your people, your planet, into the fold of this new galactic age. You are now a part of a greater alliance, an interstellar force of peace and defense. The weight of her words hit him like a crashing wave. He had saved the Queen, yes. He had brought her back to life, perhaps even saved the galaxy from chaos. But this responsibility, the idea that Earth was now part of a cosmic war, he wasn't ready for it. The Queen sensed his hesitation, and her presence softened. You will not face this alone, Lucas Reed, she said gently. Your people, your scientists, your leaders, together you will rise. And in time, you will see that you are not just humans. You are allies of the stars. Your world, so young and full of promise, will shape the future of the galaxy. You are no longer mere observers of the universe. You are its architects. He wanted to respond, to ask her about the war, about the enemies, but the words died in his throat. He wasn't sure he could take on such a massive responsibility. Yet there was no denying that this moment, this event, had changed him. He had saved a Queen. And somehow, he had made his planet a pivotal part of a larger universe, one that stretched across the stars. Thank you, Queen Lyra, he finally said, his voice quiet, but steady. I'll do my best to protect Earth, to ensure the safety of my people. Before she could respond, a ripple in the air caught his attention. The walls of the chamber flickered and hummed. Krita, who had been silently observing from the side, moved swiftly to his side. The raiders, she said, her voice urgent. They've regrouped. Their warships are already assembling outside our atmosphere. They'd been waiting for this moment, the moment of weakness. Lucas's heart sank. Just as they thought they had won, just as the Queen's life was restored, the true battle began. What are they after now? Lucas asked, his mind racing. The usurper, Krita replied, her voice cold. They seek to destroy the alliance we are forming. They wish to tear apart the unity we have just begun to build. If we are to stand a chance, we must act quickly. And you, Lucas Reed, will be the key to our survival. Krita led Lucas and the Queen's guards through the palace, moving quickly toward the central command hub. The air in the palace was thick with tension, the weight of the coming storm palpable. Lucas knew there was no going back now. The galaxy had taken notice of Earth, and there was no telling what would happen next. As they entered the command center, a holographic display of the solar system flickered to life. Several warships were positioned just outside Valorus's orbit, large, menacing ships that glinted ominously against the backdrop of the distant stars. They were heavily armed, and the fleet looked ready to strike. They're preparing for an attack, Krita said, her eyes scanning the hologram. They believe they can wipe us out, finish what they started. They do not know the strength we now have on our side. The Queen, now fully restored, hovered beside them, her glowing eyes narrowing as she surveyed the warships. They underestimate your kind, Lucas Reed. They will soon learn that Earth is not a weakling in the cosmic arena. Lucas's stomach churned. The idea of war, of fighting an enemy he didn't even understand, felt overwhelming. But then he remembered the Queen's words. His species had something that could change the course of this battle: resilience, adaptability, and the will to survive. Perhaps those were the very things the galaxy needed right now. Prepare yourself, Dr. Reed, Krita said, her voice steady. We are calling on Earth's greatest minds, its warriors, its leaders. It is time for humanity to take its place among the stars. The realization settled in Lucas's chest like a quiet, undeniable truth. This wasn't just a one-time act of heroism. This was the beginning of something much larger than anything he had ever dreamed of. Humanity was now part of the cosmic struggle, a struggle for survival, for peace, and for the future of the galaxy. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but one thing was clear: Earth's legacy had already begun, and it was a legacy that would echo through the stars for generations to come. And for the first time, Lucas Reed understood what it meant to be truly human.